Phidippides, discarding his armor, reached Sparta in 2 days. The Spartan generals received him well, but they told him that their law forbade them to do battle until the arrival of a full moon. A full moon was almost 2 weeks away. Phidippides started back to Marathon. Meanwhile, on the plains of Marathon, the opposing armies faced each other from the distance of 1 mile. The Persians, certain of victory, would begin the battle at the hour of their choice. Miltiades, however, was forming a revolutionary battle plan. He knew the Persians always attacked in a frontal assault using their entire army. To offset this massive power, he divided his army into 3 groups. A center that would take the full force of the opening Persian assault, and 2 strong flanks that could attack from the left and right. At dawn on September 10th, Phidippides returned with the news from Sparta. He also invented a story. He told Miltiades that during his run he encountered the god Pan, who told him, "Fear not, the victory will be yours, for I will be with you." On the morning of September 10th, the battle began. Quickly, the Persians pushed the Athenian center back. Miltiades then ordered his left and right flanks to the attack. The Persian drive had gone too deep. The flanks of the Athenian army could now encircle them. The Persians were confused. Confusion was followed by disorder, then complete collapse. The Persians lost almost 7,000 men. Incredibly, the Greek army lost less than 200 warriors. The Persians fled to their ships, and a new word would enter the Greek language in honor of the god Pan and the confusion his presence caused. The word panic. Ancient times, by the Acropolis and Parthenon, stands a great marble stadium. It was here in the year 1896 that the run of this Athenian warrior was commemorated, when the marathon run became part of the modern revival of the ancient Olympics. The first modern revival of the Olympic Games took place in Greece in 1896. After 5 days of competition, Greek athletes failed to win a single gold medal. The stadium crowds, predominantly Greek, were depressed, even more humiliated. On the final day, as 25 marathon runners lined up at the start, United States athletes were favored to continue their almost uninterrupted string of victories. In a little less than 3 hours, the first of the marathon runners arrived at the stadium. 70,000 fans, predominantly Greek, stood in disbelief. Then they roared their acclaim. For moving toward the finish line was a Greek runner, Spyridon Lewis. As Lewis passed the royal box, the Crown Prince of Greece and Prince George joined him in the run to the finish line. The triumph was historic. After 2,000 years, a Greek runner, Spyridon Lewis, had again made a victorious run from the plains of Marathon. The most dramatic marathon in the history of the Olympic Games took place in London's White City Stadium in the year 1908. And ironically, this most controversial race took place in the first Olympiad ever filmed. Officials decided it would be appropriate to have the Prince of Wales, later to be King George V, start the 75 runners off from the green lawns of Windsor Castle. And this beautiful setting gave no indication of the incredible events that would take place less than 3 hours later. The favorite race was Heffernan of South Africa, and after 15 kilometers, he took the lead. Close behind Heffernan came Dorando Pietri, the candy maker from Italy, and a few minutes further back, the American Johnny Hayes. In the stadium, Queen Alexandra and more than 60,000 spectators received advance reports sent ahead by motorcar that Heffernan was a certain winner. The crowd waited anxiously to cheer a member of the Commonwealth. At the 40-kilometer mark, the crowd was amazed to see the Italian Dorando start to spurt, and he passed the South African. Still a few minutes behind Dorando was Hayes of the United States, and he too passed Heffernan. Now word was received that Dorando was at the approaches to the stadium. His triumphant entrance was but moments away. Dorando was exhausted in a state of collapse. He staggered all over the track. Then he fell. Officials ran to his aid and began an attempt to revive him. Meanwhile, Johnny Hayes was approaching the stadium. 4 times, Dorando fell. Each time, he miraculously was able to get up. But now, for the first time, people feared for the brave Italian's life. Then, once more on his feet, and with officials leading the way, Dorando Pietri crossed the finish line. Worried officials carried him from the track unconscious, and a few moments later, Johnny Hayes crossed the finish line. Almost immediately, the Italian flag was raised in signal of victory for Dorando, but after several hours of discussion, the officials disqualified him for being assisted to the finish line. Hayes was declared the winner. Queen Alexandra, great-grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II, presented Hayes with a gold medal. Later, Johnny Hayes, waving the American flag, was carried off the field by his teammates. White City Stadium is on the outskirts of London. Joe Deacon of Great Britain was a gold medal winner in the 1908 Olympic 3-mile team race, an event no longer contested. Before he died in 1975 at the age of 93, he recalled the finish of the marathon.
That's magnificent, Joe.
Thank you.
Now, the Dorando Hayes episode, they came in over there at the Wood Lane entrance, right? Can you recall exactly what happened?
Well, Dorando came in first, and he started to go left. Then they turned him round, and he went on, and suddenly his knees seemed to go, and he collapsed onto the track. Then I understood afterwards he'd been gargling Chantilly during the race, and he must have got into his legs. So that's as far as I knew about it.
And then when did Hayes come in?
Hayes came in afterwards, and the Americans protested, and so naturally Dorando was disqualified.
No. Can you remember the reaction of the crowd as Dorando came in?
Well, everybody got to their feet. They worried and wondered if he was going to die or something.
Jim Peters was one of the great marathon runners of the post-World War II era. He ran his last Olympic race in 1952. Peters had his chance at Olympic immortality on 2 different occasions, in the 10,000-meter run in 1948 and in the marathon in 1952. Both times, his major obstacle was Emil Zátopek of Czechoslovakia.
I first met Emil Zátopek of Czechoslovakia on the opening day of the 1948 Olympic Games. I gave everything I got for Britain that day, and so did the 2 other British runners. But alas, I was lapped by Zátopek and finished 9th. I then decided to retire from athletics, but such was my love for the sport that I only retired for 6 months. And back I came to prepare for the 1952 Olympic Games, which were in Helsinki. Now, I was the favourite. There was only one man that appeared to stand in my way, Zátopek. 75 runners, the best in the world in 1952, went off. Just before we turned round at the halfway mark, up come the Czech Zátopek, and in broken English said, "Jim, the pace." Is it too fast? Well, I was born in the East End of London, and we don't give up easily, so back come my Cockney wit, and I said, "The pace? Too slow." So he said, "You say too slow, Jim?" I said, "Yes." And then with a continental shrug of the shoulders, off he went. I tucked my head in, away I went after him. I wasn't going to surrender. But believe me, I tried everything I knew, and just the miracle of 1952 just went away from me. I just couldn't run another yard. For the first time in my life, I quitted a race. I was brought back in an ambulance to the stadium, and there I saw the great Zátopek come in, smiling happily to win his 3rd Olympic medal.
2 years later at the British Commonwealth Games in Vancouver, before Prince Philip and 25,000 spectators, Jim Peters was again the favorite in one of the most dramatic marathon races ever run.
To get to the stadium, we had to climb a steep hill. To me, it seemed like a mountain. I got up there and down a slope into the stadium onto a ramp. I felt a little giddy. The sun was shining brightly. The 25,000 people were cheering me. And into the stadium I come and onto the track. Then things started to happen. The track seemed to me like quicksand, for down I went. Good Lord, says I, is this going to be another Dorando, the 1908 Games, with John Hayes of America? No, up you get and finish. Whatever you do, there's no surrender. You must touch that tape and finish. So up I got. There's one thing I was determined to do, and that was to finish. So over to the wrong side of the track I went, determined to make the last lunge onto the tape. Unfortunately, the tape wasn't there. They'd altered the finish to 180 yards around the corner, and the British team manager and trainer grabbed hold of me, and I was disqualified. There's a happy ending to that story. In 1967, I was invited back to Vancouver to complete the last lap of the race that I failed to finish. I had to shed off 3 stone. I went back into training and a strict diet, and there went back. It was like returning from the grave. I could see all the athletes of the Commonwealth there parading, just in my imagination. And out I came from that long ramp down onto the track and ran just as it was getting dark. All the floodlights came on and completed that last lap. Again, there were 25,000 people there, and they cheered me and gave me a wonderful reception, which I shall remember for the rest of my days.
Jim Peters had returned to Vancouver to complete the longest marathon he had ever run. 13 years. It is Saturday, September 10th, 1960. The time, 5:30 in the afternoon. The place, the Campidoglio, atop Capitoline Hill in Rome. 69 runners from 35 countries. Kelly, Great Britain, second. Van den Vries, Belgium, third. Bikila, Ethiopia, fourth. Abebe Bikila is running without track shoes. It is now Abebe and Bikila have made it a two-man race. Nightfall has set in, and they have reached the Appian Way. Roddy and Bikila are running together. Barry McGee, New Zealand, third. Mamo Wolde and the defending champion, Abebe Bikila. The runners leave the stadium. In a little more than 2 hours, the first of them will return. At 5 kilometers, it is Hogan of Ireland, Clark of Australia, and Abebe Bikila of Ethiopia. For the next 15 kilometers, the three will exchange the lead. Abebe reaches the halfway point first. For the first time, there is open ground between him and Hogan. The heat is starting to affect Clark. He drops back. At 30 kilometers, Abebe now leads Hogan by 600 meters, almost a half mile. Tsuburaya of Japan moves into third place. Abebe Bikila, Ethiopia, first. Ben Heatley, Great Britain, second. Kokichi Tsuburaya, Japan, third. October 1968. The Olympic Village, Mexico City. Abebe Bikila will try for his third straight Olympic marathon gold medal. But there is concern in the Ethiopian camp. Abebe is not in top physical condition. He injured his leg in a training session. The marathon race is just 1 week away. It is Sunday, October 20th, 1968. The time, 2:30 in the afternoon. 72 runners start the 26-mile, 385-yard marathon run. Because of the injury to Abebe, Ethiopian track coach Nigusi Roba has entered 2 other marathoners, Mamo Wolde and Marawi Gabron. Mamo Wolde won the silver medal in the 10,000 meters 1 week before. At 10 kilometers, Nigusi Roba informs Mamo Wolde that Abebe Bikila is running in great pain. Mamo increases his pace. He leaves the field behind. In second position, Kimahara of Japan, followed by Ryan of New Zealand. At 30 kilometers, Nigusi again talks to Mamo. He tells him Abebe has been forced to retire from the race. The other favorites cannot keep up. Mamo is a half mile in front. The stadium comes into view. Mamo Wolde is 3 minutes ahead of Kimahara of Japan. For Mamo, the final yards are doubly satisfying. One of the runners who broke under his grueling pace was Temu of Kenya, the man who defeated him 1 week before. For the third time in succession, an Ethiopian has won the race over the classic marathon distance. The final placings: Wolde, Ethiopia first, Kimahara, Japan second, Ryan, New Zealand third. In sixth place, Marawi Gabrun, Ethiopia. For Mamo, it is the first time he has ever defeated Abebe. Says Mamo, Abebe was not well. If he had not been injured, he would have won. Like Abebe before him, Mamo would be invited to the imperial palace to receive the personal greetings of the emperor. Abebe was still bothered by the leg injury. Every day he would run the countryside, and soon his leg strengthened. In March 1969, while the marathoners were training for competition outside of Ethiopia, tragic news was received. It was learned that Abebe, returning home after a day's practice, was critically injured in an automobile accident. He survived, but his injuries were crippling. The emperor ordered that he be sent to England for further treatment. It is the end of summer, 1969. Abebe finally returns to Addis. Many thousands are there to greet him. Teammates, his wife and children. There are no words spoken. None are needed. Abebe knows he probably will never walk again. September 10th, 1972, the Munich Olympic Stadium. 71 runners gather for the start of the marathon race. Mamo Wolde, age 40, will try to duplicate Abebe Bikila's feat of 2 successive Olympic victories. The Munich Olympic Committee has invited Abebe to witness the attempt. Mamo is not the favorite. Ron Hill of Great Britain, a veteran of the Tokyo and Mexico City marathons, is picked by most to win the gold medal that eluded him twice before. 3 other marathoners are given good chances: Derek Clayton, Australia, Carol Lismont, Belgium, and Frank Shorter, United States. They leave the stadium. At 10 kilometers, Clayton takes over the lead, followed by Hill. Gaston Rollants of Belgium, the 3,000-meter steeplechase winner in Tokyo, moves into 6th place. Clayton's pace has been exhausting. He slows it down. Frank Shorter of the United States takes a bold chance. Now he sprints away from the pack. Kenny Moore, United States, moves into 2nd place, followed by Mamo Wolde, Ethiopia, and Carol Lismont, Belgium. They are more than a minute in back of Shorter, some 400 meters behind. Shorter moves relentlessly on. At 35 kilometers, he increases his lead to almost 2 minutes. Shorter is all alone. With each stride, he increases his lead. Nine runners have fallen exhausted to the pavement. 2 have to be hospitalized. Now Shorter approaches the stadium. Shorter's time, 2 hours, 12 minutes, 19 and 8/10 seconds. He is the first United States marathon winner since Johnny Hayes' victory in 1908. In second position, Carol Lismont, Belgium. Mamo Wolde, Ethiopia, third. Frank Shorter looks forward to the Montreal Olympic Games in 1976, when he will attempt to duplicate Abebe Bikila's record of 2 successive marathon gold medals. July 31st, 1976, the final day of the track and field competitions of the Montreal Olympic Games. 67 runners are entered in the marathon. The favorite in the race, defending champion Frank Shorter. The runners leave the stadium. They will travel through the streets of Montreal and then return to the stadium to reach the finish line. At 20 kilometers, Bill Rogers of the United States leads. He won the Boston Marathon 1 year before. In the group behind Bill Rogers is Lassi Viren of Finland, the winner of the 5,000 and 10,000 meter here in Montreal. Viren is running in his first marathon. Waldemar Cierpinski, number 51, is from East Germany. Cierpinski, on the left, has been running the marathon since 1974. The race goes on. Shorter moves ahead by 7 meters. But his teammate Bill Rogers is in trouble. He is suffering from a leg cramp and soon will retire from the race. With the race 3/4 over, Frank Shorter is in the lead, but he shares it now with a comparative unknown, Waldemar Cierpinski of East Germany, and it is now a 2-man race. They run side by side in the drizzling rain. Now Cierpinski moves slightly ahead of the defending champion. The other runners in the race will battle for the bronze medal. At 40 kilometers, Cierpinski is still running strong. Shorter falls further and further behind. With just a few kilometers left, Frank Shorter knows that it is all over. Cierpinski continues on. The stadium is just a few hundred meters away. Finally, Cierpinski enters the stadium. Waldemar Cierpinski wins the 1976 Montreal Marathon. Frank Shorter second. Carol Lismont, Belgium third. 4 years later at the Moscow Games, Waldemar Cierpinski will defend his title. Many of the great marathoners of the world will not compete because of the boycott. But it is doubtful if any of the absentees would have beaten Cierpinski this day. In a little over 2 hours, Cierpinski is the first man to enter the stadium, just as he was 4 years before. As he crosses the finish line, there is an additional honor for Waldemar Cierpinski. He joins Abebe Bikila of Ethiopia as one of 2 men to win the Olympic marathon twice. It is 4 years later, Los Angeles. More than 100 runners line up for the start of the marathon. Waldemar Cierpinski of East Germany is not one of them. The Soviet Union and member nations of the Eastern European bloc have boycotted the Games. Cierpinski's chance of becoming the first man in history to win 3 Olympic marathons is gone forever. Nevertheless, there is a great international field of marathoners, including Rob Di Costella of Australia, Alberto Salazar of the United States, Toshiko Seiko, Japan, and Carlos Lopes, Portugal. In a little more than 2 hours, history is made at the Los Angeles Coliseum. 37-year-old Carlos Lopes of Portugal is the first man to enter the stadium. For Carlos Lopes, the oldest man to win the marathon, it is his second Olympic medal. 8 years earlier in Montreal, he finished second behind Lassi Viren in the 10,000-meter run. But now, as he crosses the finish line, there is the knowledge that he has won the fastest marathon in the history of the Olympic Games. It is only the second marathon he has ever finished. At the 1928 Olympics in Amsterdam, the women's 800 meters was contested for the first time, and perhaps most important, oneself. Joan Benoit enters the Locomotive. 4 years later in Seoul, she's the first runner to enter the stadium in the second women's Olympic marathon race ever run. Her victory here has set a standard that will be difficult to reach in future Olympiads. In 2 Olympic races, Rosa Mota of Portugal has won gold and bronze medals.
This is Untitled Chapter. Rosa Mota, Portugal.
9 days later, the final day of the Seoul Olympic Games. 118 men line up for the men's marathon. As the runners circle the track before moving to the streets of Seoul, there is an historic remembrance of the past. On opening day, Korea paid honor to one of its legendary athletes, Son Kee-chung, the last torchbearer to enter the stadium. More than a half-century earlier, at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, running under the Japanese name of Kee-tae-son, he won the marathon. Because Korea had been occupied by Japan, he had to run under the Japanese flag. There is another historic reminder of the past as Gelindo Bordin of Italy enters the stadium a little more than 2 hours after the start. And into the stadium, exhausted and disoriented, Pietri was assisted by officials to the finish line and disqualified. Johnny Hayes of the United States was declared the winner. Now, 80 years later, Italy regains the glory it lost in 1908. Gelindo Bordin crosses the finish line in front of Douglas Wakihuri of Kenya and Ahmed Salah of Djibouti in one of the closest marathons in Olympic history. Only 27 seconds separating first and third place. Gelindo Bordin of Italy stands on the top step of the victory podium to hear his national anthem played for the first time in the Olympic history of the marathon.
Four years later, at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, the women's marathon provided the closest finish in the long history of this event. In the early part of the race, Valentina Yegorova of Russia takes a commanding lead over the rest of the field. As each kilometer goes by, she goes farther and farther ahead. An easy victory for her appears certain. But as the stadium comes in sight, Yegorova is now challenged by Yuko Arimori of Japan, who has methodically chipped down Yegorova's commanding lead. The question now is whether Arimori has anything left to challenge the Russian in the last few hundred meters of the race. Yegorova enters the stadium. Arimori is 5 seconds behind. Down the back stretch, Yegorova increases her pace. As she circles the track, it is now certain that her strategy is correct. Arimori cannot answer. With each stride, Yegorova increases her lead. Yegorova of Russia is the winner of the third women's Olympic marathon ever run. Second place, 8 seconds behind, Yuko Arimori of Japan. Third place, Lorraine Moller, New Zealand. The award ceremony takes place. Valentina Yegorova is flanked by Arimori and Moller, the silver and bronze medal winners, as the Russian anthem is played in her honor. 8 days later, more than 100 runners start the men's marathon, a route that will wind through the streets of Barcelona, ending at the Olympic Stadium. During the first part of the race, the lead changes hands several times, with none of the runners attempting a breakaway in the oppressive humidity. A little past the midpoint of the race, tragedy struck Japan's Hiromi Taniguchi, who won the Tokyo World Championship Marathon 1 year earlier. He slipped and lost one of his shoes. Backtracking to retrieve his shoe, he lost valuable time. He would spend the rest of the race expending excess energy in an attempt to catch the field and become a contender. But it was not to be. He finally caught the front pack, but this effort left him little hope for a serious challenge for one of the medals. As the race continues, it becomes evident that the battle will be between Hwang Young-cho of South Korea and Koichi Morishita of Japan. With 2 kilometers left, Hwang Young-cho has moved past Morishita and starts to pull away. With each stride, he increases his lead. Soon he enters the stadium. He is more than 300 meters ahead of Morishita of Japan. As Hwang Young-cho moves toward the finish line, there are remembrances of the past. More than half a century before, his countryman son Kee-chung won the marathon running under the Japanese flag. Now, 56 years later, Hwang Young-cho stands on the top step of the victory podium, responsible for the South Korean national anthem being played for the first time in the long history of the marathon run.
It is Addis Ababa, autumn 1972. Ethiopia is still ruled by 82-year-old Emperor Haile Selassie. Abebe Bikila, paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair, is still a member of the Emperor's imperial bodyguard. On this day, he will attend the dedication of the Abebe Bikila Gymnasium here in Addis. It is one of Abebe's rare public appearances. In recent months, his health has deteriorated. General Kabidi Worku, deputy commander of the Imperial Bodyguard, speaks in Amharic.
ክቡራትና ክቡራን በዛሬው ቀን እዚህ ተሰብስበን የተገኘነው
He says,
በአሜሪካ መንግስትና
it is perhaps desirous to leave the deeds and accomplishments of Captain Abebe to the historians. However, on an occasion such as this, I think it appropriate to remind you of his extraordinary feats, which will be written but also must be spoken. His valor, his courage, his will to win. Though athletes like Abebe belong to the world, he also belongs to Ethiopia, in the hearts and minds of our young who have been inspired to achieve greatness. We are thankful that Captain Abebe is here today in our midst. Let us hope and pray that he will be well once again. Several months later, Captain Abebe Bikila died of a cerebral hemorrhage. And so another link has been added to a chain that stretches almost 2,500 years in recorded history. For then it was written that an unknown runner was dispatched from the battlefield where the mountains look on Marathon and Marathon looks on the sea. And this unknown runner ran the 40 kilometers over the mountains and the countryside under a hot sun. And with steady stride, he moved over the beloved land, and soon he would be home. And he ran to where the people waited, and he would tell them, yes, we are victorious.